So the day is finally here. The Three Lions are kicking off their World Cup campaign, facing Iran in that opening match at 1 p.m.
And it comes amid controversy around England captain Harry Kane, who could face an instant yellow card for wearing the One Love armband in support of LGBTQ+ rights.
Well, Wales also launched their World Cup campaign this evening, facing off against the United States.
And yesterday's opener ended up with Qatar losing 2-0 to Ecuador, making them the first World Cup host to lose their opening match in the tournament's 92-year history.
That is the historic title you don't want, isn't it? Well, look, we can go to Qatar now. Our reporter Paul Hawkins joins us this morning. Good to see you, Paul. Look, peak excitement here in the UK, but as usual, much of the football almost being overshadowed by the controversies, the politics. Do we think that Harry Kane, with the support of the Football Association, is going to go out and wear that rainbow One Love band?
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely going to wear it. They're going to take the knee, they're going to wear the armbands, they're going to make their voices heard, and if they have to, they'll take a yellow card for it. So we do expect to see them wearing their One Love armbands, as the Welsh team will be. And let's be honest, today is a huge day for Welsh football. England qualify for most tournaments. They've done really well in the last two major tournaments, reaching obviously the final of the European Championships and also the semi-final of the last World Cup. But for Wales, they haven't been to a World Cup since 1958. This is a huge occasion for 5 million Welsh people and the 3,000 or so Welsh supporters that have made the journey to Qatar, in addition to the Welsh expats that live here already. Remember, 80% of the people that live in Qatar are expats. And last night we caught up with one Welsh family on the waterfront, the Corniche. It was dark, and we just had the countdown, in fact, to the start of the first World Cup match with Qatar and Ecuador. And this is what the Welsh family has to tell us about how they're feeling about today's game.
So excited, and I can't believe it because Leo was actually born here and he's actually going to be here for the World Cup with Wales playing, so we're all so excited.
Yeah, Leo, he's just examining the Welsh dragon.
The dragon.
He loves dragon. You like the dragon?
Dragon.
Yeah. We mentioned that you live in Doha as well, in Qatar. A lot's been written about Qatar in the press. Has that been fair?
I don't think so. I think really, it's got a lot of bad press, but really it's a very relaxed place. There's a lot going on. In terms of what we see here, I think it's overblown. I think, say for example, the World Cup was in Russia. We didn't seem to bring up so many of the issues there, but as it's come here, it's the Middle East, I think it's a little bit overblown.
So that's Todd, Jessica and Leo from Wrexham giving us their thoughts ahead of the game, which kicks off today. We're already seeing England fans. I can see a couple of Welsh fans over there. And we've seen lots of USA fans milling around as well. So the atmosphere is going to build as the day progresses. But before that, it is England taking on Iran. It's going to be fascinating to see how the Iranian players behave, given what has been happening in their country, given that domestic Iranian football has been held behind closed doors. And in fact, when the Iranian players score a goal in their domestic league, they don't celebrate at the moment. They point to the sky or they cut their hair in solidarity with the women because of the protests that have been happening in their country. And indeed, they don't even sing the national anthem. So how they behave during the match is going to be fascinating to watch, as well as the football itself. This is what one English family told us. They've travelled over to Qatar specially for the game this afternoon.
It's a bit hot, and I was surprised in the morning when we got out.
Yeah. And are you going to go and watch any football? Have you got tickets?
Yeah, we're going to watch England-Iran tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Are you excited? Yeah. Are you a football fan?
Yes.
Yeah. Dad, how excited are you?
Oh, very excited. Yeah. It only comes around every 4 years, doesn't it? So I know there's been obviously lots of controversy concerning this one, but so far we've got nothing for praise for the people that we've come across. It seems to be really well organised. Everyone's, like my daughter says, really friendly. So yeah, really excited for tomorrow.
So we're staying on one of the cruise ships, and it was great last night. Really good. It's good value, isn't it? Apart from the food, I suppose.
Food a bit expensive.
Yeah, food's a bit expensive. But the accommodation is great. I mean, we're the first people on the ship, so it's immaculate completely.
So really, England's biggest enemy, frankly, when they take on Iran is complacency. Of course, they're the overwhelming favourites to win it, but if Iran were to pull off the unimaginable, it would be an incredible sight. And then in terms of Wales against the USA, it's going to be a tough game for Wales against the USA. They're high energy, they're organised. They don't tend to resort to the long ball as they used to. They tend to play through the midfield. But Wales are the overwhelming favourites, especially given that they've got Gareth Bale. So it's going to be two fascinating matchups that we see later on. If the evening kick-off is at 10 o'clock, it will still be 25 degrees, give or take here, still very warm. In the afternoon, it could touch 30, and that is going to affect the pace at which England play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Paul, I was wondering about the armband. There's been a bit of a backlash back here because, of course, if Harry gets booked and he gets booked again during the game, he'll miss the next match. Or if he wears the armband for the USA game as well, he'll miss the Wales match. Is it worth it?
Well, I mean, the England players would say, yeah, it is, because they have to kind of draw a line in the sand and they have to be consistent with their messaging. They've talked about inclusivity. They've said that they are here to represent the rights of the LGBT Q plus community as well. So for them to then row back on that would open them up to accusations of hypocrisy. Look, you've said that you're an inclusive side, that you're an inclusive country, and then you decide to row back on the armband. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they wear it or not, because either way there will be consequences. Either they'll get a yellow card or they'll be open to accusations of hypocrisy. So it'll be fascinating to see whether they wear the armband later, and indeed whether the Welsh team do as well.
Paul, I just want to ask you about the opening match last night and indeed the opening ceremony. A bit of a storm kicked up here. Lots of people very disappointed they weren't able to watch the opening ceremony. But what was interesting was during that match when Qatar, the home nation, broke that record, becoming the first host nation to lose the first game in history, a lot of people started to leave before the end of the match. Empty stadium from about 70 minutes on. Quite a shocking image to be projecting. What did you make of all of that?
Personally, I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, if I'm honest, because pretty much most home fans will start to leave their own stadium, even earlier than 70 minutes, frankly. In fact, you see it all the time in cricket, in rugby, in all sports. When the home side are losing, fans tend to leave the stadium. It happens all the time in the Premier League. So, frankly, it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. I think it's also symptomatic of the way some of the media have been a little bit unfair to Qatar, if I'm honest. That's not to say there aren't the issues. Those issues are valid, but there are many things that happen normally. In sport, you often see the players leaving at the end. That's what happens. So I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, if I'm honest. You'll see England, if England are losing to Iran 3-0 later and there's 20 minutes to go, you might well see England fans leaving at the end because they couldn't possibly face the humiliation of being there when the final whistle was called. So it's a bit of a storm in a teacup, to be honest. It's what normally happens with home fans. And I guess you can only really judge the enthusiasm of the Qataris when we get to the next game that Qatar plays.
And I just have to ask you about, the criticisms that people like Gary Lineker, other BBC pundits have been getting for, instead of broadcasting the opening ceremony, deciding to talk about the human rights record of the host nation. Lots of criticism being levelled at him and others for that, and yet not the same level of criticism and scrutiny for the likes of Harry Kane, who are also, by some descriptions, virtue signalling, using that platform to extol their views. So why is it that the pundits get such a hard time, and yet the players seem to be okay to do it, do you think?
It's a good question, if I'm honest. It's difficult to say. Maybe there's a little bit more animosity towards the pundits, given they have a slightly different role to the players. It's honestly, it's a very difficult thing to say. I couldn't give you an answer on that, if I'm honest.
I just wanted to raise it because it struck me as there's hypocrisy about the hypocrisy as I was looking at the papers this morning. Paul, really fascinating talking to you this morning.
Well, that's I was going to say that's a very interesting point, the hypocrisy about the hypocrisy, and we end up going down this weird hypocrisy wormhole. And at the moment, there's definitely this looking for hypocrisy and inconsistencies in people's positions all the time, which frankly means that none of us anywhere can make any point, because there's probably some point in our lives where we did something that contradicted something that we said. So, we're going down what I call a hypocrisy wormhole, which can frankly be quite counterproductive.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, we're going to be speaking to you lots and lots throughout the course of the World Cup. First one underway for us. Really good to get excited about the game a little bit later on. Thank you.